Hey there, hope you're doing good. Let's continue refactoring Futurecam. We are changing some ifs to guards. So let's try changing this. So here the logic would be more convoluted to read. So what this is saying is for this code to execute, the file should not exist, but it's convoluted. So let's undo this change. This is a guardlet. Yeah, here you are returning either way, so you won't save anything with a guard. Guard file size greater than 0 URL plus util. Yeah, this is unsigned. Okay, here you are checking for nil already, then you are checking for greater than 0. So to return true, it has to be greater than 0, which is fine. Deinit has been kind of deprecated in Swift. You are going to get compiler warnings in the future if you use it. And in many languages, it's considered a bad practice. Like in Java, there's no guarantee that finalizers are invoked. Okay, never mind. Let's move on to the next file, burst saver. So uint, yes, you see here. So in order to proceed, there should be some pending photos to save. I think we should remove this code, which is a different task. So as you know, iOS apps can run on an iOS simulator, but that doesn't work for camera apps. I tried to make it work. Eventually, we didn't use it. And probably 1% of the app works on the simulator, so it doesn't achieve anything. To proceed, you should be in a different mode from the one you are changing to. So if you're changing to time-lapse mode, you should not be in time-lapse mode, which makes sense. Otherwise, you'll just return. This is just a protocol. I'm really tempted to remove the front code from this app because the front camera doesn't make sense without multi-time lapse. So again, the way you read it is, in order to proceed, you should have a pixel buffer, which makes sense. Otherwise, invoking a callback with a nil buffer doesn't achieve anything. Here, to proceed, you need to have a processed callback. Oops, I forgot my else. In order to take more photos, you should have 0 pending photos. In a startup, you are always under time pressure, so you don't get a chance to work through some of these matters. Ideally, what I should have done was had continuous improvement. But after a while, I said, let's just focus on building features, not on improving the code. Like, we did focus a lot, but towards the end. That's not how you should run. Continuous improvement. Every week, some percentage of your time should go towards improving the code. Otherwise, it will degenerate and you will pay a price. So again, you shouldn't do this because the engineering principles say so. You should do this because it benefits you. Anyway, so here you are guarding that there should be a callback. This is not suitable for a guard because it's a break, not a return. I hope I'm not impatient and missing stuff. This is kind of an annoying thing to do. But like I said, right, you would keep doing this as you go along so that dozens of refactorings one after the other don't bore you. Hey, I thought we called this grid. Oh, I didn't rename the file. Okay. I keep forgetting that because I rename it here and Xcode takes care of it. Okay, whatever, doesn't matter really. Yeah, this can be made a guardlet because we are just returning here. This reduces the nesting level of the code. In order for us to do an animation, there should not be an animation already in progress. Okay. Here you can't use iflet or guardlet because you are going to modify this, which you can't do with iflet or guardlet because they introduce a local variable. So it just causes more confusion. So sometimes clear type unsafe code is better than type safe code, which is confusing or prone to bugs. Okay, I don't think there's much here. Okay, let's close all these files and move on to the controllers. See, this is not a helpful comment, it just repeats what it says. Like you can literally read it, right? Less than array count. Like what's going on here? Oh, again we have a problem with things fitting in lines, and I don't know why we say string. It should get type inferred. Like what else can this get type inferred to? Yeah, this obviously needs multiple lines. Nothing here. Straight line code is easier to read and understand and work with, isn't it? Okay, we are done with the onboarding controllers, not all the controllers. Okay, here's one. I don't know why we have this return, because anyway it's going to return. It's the end of that callback. Here it makes sense because we have some code. Again, the way to read it is, in order to make a purchase, we need to make sure that the user hasn't already paid. This is the purchase call. Oh, this is going to be huge. In order to create a camera, it should be nil. You shouldn't create it twice. Let me use the page down key to scroll one screen full. Actually, we don't need a protocol called long recording mode, because there's only one class, burst mode, that is different from the others, and you don't need a protocol with only one. Remove if there are multiple classes which are long recording and multiple that are not, then you don't want to have a list. If it is an instance of A or B or C, then a protocol makes sense. If there's only one, it's like overkill. Oh, so since there isn't any code following the if else statement, we can convert it to an early return, and then maybe we'll change it to a guard. That's the second step, but let's make the first change first. So now we'll swap. So if it is not the first launch, animate. If it is the first launch, don't animate. Same logic. This is weird. You are reading it and then checking and returning if it is unknown. You are returning if it is not unknown either. I think this comment should go here. Anyway, the problem with writing bad code is it may actually be correct for some reason I don't understand. For example, maybe it relies on some side effect from reading this. But people will refactor it if it looks bad, even if it is actually correct and the refactoring causes a bug, simply because it looks like it's bad code, right? So don't write code that happens to work but looks bad. Okay. I don't understand why we needed this. It's type safe, sure, you can't have some other string. Okay. Like, I don't mind it, but fine. One of the engineers I had was very good at following Swift conventions when they helped. He was excellent at it. Okay, extensions. It should not be in the log modes. Then only you kind of log it to Firebase. So not equal to no error means there is an error. Only then you are going to copy the entries. This should be uint. This can be changed into a ternary operator. It's fine, it's clear enough. If you made it guard, it would be odd. You actually can't make it guard because it's a let. Problem with this is, it's not a problem as such. Maybe I am becoming a type safety zealot myself, but this is an optional type, so you have to do it here. So one way of doing it is else return, this is an empty array, this is an empty dictionary, which is a map for those of you Java developers. Oh, we need a comment. Because the thing was, we were anyway doing a cast, so we might as well use this. I don't know. Oh, 16 changes. This is fine, straight line code. Some of these are judgment calls. You have to strike the balance between improving the code, considering that you have a preference, and whatever you are used to seems right to you, whatever you are not used to seems weird or unnecessary to you. So you have to overcome that. So sometimes you should kind of get out of your comfort zone and do things which are kind of weird, but then before committing you should look at the diffs. Guardlet we are not using asset collection, fetch what is this? You are loading an album. If the first object is not nil, you don't need the asset collection here. Let's see if this makes sense. Before you invoke the completion handler, there should be a first album. If it is nil, you create the album and return. Okay, good. Not the cleanest code. What is $0? This is a good use of guardlet. Guardlet asset equal to asset, else return false. Here you don't need this. SK product not much, UI color not much, UI device. Unfortunately, there is no way to get the focal length in millimeters from the API. You get only the angle of view in degrees, and the conversion from that to this is not straightforward. Guard, there should be a, this is floating point, so it's okay, you don't need to do greater than equal to, because the chance that it is 0.010000 exactly is very low, and anyway it's an arbitrary threshold, so it's fine. So let's do it step by step. Guard, not of this whole thing. Boolean logic can be confusing. And what's the formula for this? The AND becomes OR, and each of the conditions is inverted. Yes. The maximum value should be high, or the device implementation should be unknown. Okay, good. Here the orientation should be different in order for us to trigger the callback. So here, one of the engineers I used to work with was very good at using Swift features, wrote this code so that you subscript it with a class type to find the subview of that type. I would have just preferred a named function instead of an operator overload, but I can't really say that his code is wrong. Here again we can make it type safe. Guard let presented view controller equal to presented view controller, else return nil or return this. Okay, we are done with extensions. Now we'll look at modes. Commented code. It should be capture type video always. It's a weird assertion to write. This should be true, which means this, which means this. It should not be empty, there should be some results. Return this is one refactoring. guard So if you are recording, you stop recording. Okay, if you're done with the modes, in some of these we should look at the guard not and see if we can invert it. Again, only if it helps, not always. Like it should logically make sense, not just syntactically and style point of view. It's all straight line code. I don't even know if this is handled correctly. That is the problem, right? The compiler says you haven't handled the default case. So you blindly put in default and you have to write some code, so you write break. So now the compiler is happy, but you don't know whether this case is actually handled. If not, if you think you have handled everything here, you should put a fatal error. Don't fail silently. Don't sweep problems under the carpet. God, this UI code is not the best. Update 0,0. What does that mean? It should be minutes colon seconds. Oh, it's a local function, which is very odd. Okay, fine. I think a cleaner way of writing this will be, oh, this is a timer. So you can't, I was going to define a local variable here and at the end use it, but then no, it's a timer. Okay, never mind. Controls view. Itable label. So did move to super view is called when you move to a super view, which could be null or nil if this view has been removed from the view hierarchy completely. So it's no longer on screen. UI code requires far more effort than you would think. We had problems where it was dragging when it was hidden. I don't know why. Even though we were disabling the scroll. So you had to write code to take care of all that. Either I was going to say either Apple's poor code or poor documentation, but both poor code and poor documentation. Certainly poor documentation if there is some logical reason why it has to work the way it does. And because it's closed source, you can't even look into it to figure out why it is working that way. So, working with Buggy closed source code is worse than working with Buggy open source code. Again, this should be type safe. As question mark ethable. First equal to first, else return this. I think I was the one who would write this type unsafe code in the past, because there is a subtle difference. This code behaves differently from this code if it is non-nil and not ethable. This would crash. And I used to argue that it's actually good that way, because that's an error. It should never be some other data type, some other class type. This one will treat it as nil. So it's okay. It's not worth the type unsafety and the odd looking code to handle that edge case, which shouldn't happen anyway. Shutter button. What on earth is this? Oh my god, you have two callbacks. Okay. This is the completion, I guess. Yeah. Return. This goes away. This goes away. Why is this 4 spaces? This can't be a let because this function modifies it. Yeah, this is too much. No need to redundantly check. And wait, is this function called only once? Yeah, so we can inline it. Is it the same thing going on here? Yes. I hope there isn't a third case of the same copy pasted code. Shutter button. No. Was it shutter button I was working with? Okay, yeah, this was the code. If it is nil, you do something. So again, let's change it step by step. If it is not equal to nil, return. And then the code. Now you change it to a guard. Guard. It has to be nil because you are going to do an animation here and you don't want to do it twice. Okay, shutter button is thankfully the last UI class. Now we move on to util. When you find trash, pick it up. No one else is going to. Oh wait, it was 92 or 102, my mistake. Yeah, it was 102. This is fine. It's odd to do this for the side effect. It has to be nil because we are going to present it and we can't present it on top of something else. There should be a main controller, otherwise you use nil. Actually, you can do this since you are not reassigning. It just saves mental effort of the reader in verifying that this exclamation mark is safe. Hint manager. Yeah, this is complex enough as it is. I don't want to mess it up further. If the date is less than 14 days, return. Okay, fine. How would you do it? You can't do it as a guardlet, I guess. This comma is basically an AND operator. You can't convert it because if you change it to guardlet and put a NOT operator outside, when it goes inside the parenthesis, the AND operator becomes OR, and in the OR you can't access this variable. So never mind. Guard this and then frame duration greater than 0 and then frame duration less than 1/8 night. Sheesh. If you are in time lapse mode and the duration is too low and the user has not taken a time lapse at all, then you tell him to do it, you tell him to wait. Yeah, these are two unnecessary levels of nesting. Duration less than min duration for fast videos, else return. I hope I didn't mess anything up. What? I did mess something up. Where did hint manager go? It's not sorted, eh? Again, these things go wrong when you don't do it step by step. This should be good. You are combining if A, if B to if A and B. Oops. Yeah, if you use a guard, you have to repeat the return in both cases. Again, DRY, so it's okay. Oh, you don't need this local variable. So what does this code say? If there's a duration and the duration is less, okay. Would this work? Guard let duration equal to duration. Yeah, it's basically same as and. So here there is a duration and the duration is greater than else return. So there are three cases, right? Nil case, return false. So let's again ignore this code here. Let's again fix this step by step. Here you return false. Here you return true. Right? So far so good. Now this comes in the non-null case only. If it is nil, it goes here. This also goes here. And if it is less, again it returns false. Here also. Yeah. Don't do this. Func do something, and within this function you have var return value equal to false if something return value equal to true, and then some code and return value. Instead just make it just directly return true and false. So now what are we doing? For this to work, there should be a duration and it should be less. Then only you will show a hint saying it's too short. Obviously, if it is greater, you won't say it's too short. This is correct. I'm getting bored and skipping some of these. I'm sure you guys are bored as well, so let's try to wrap it up soon. If I'm suitably crazy, I'll look at it again. It's used only here. Oh man, can inline it. If this whole thing is if statement, then you return. Okay. Oh my god, 30. Let's look at each and stage it as we are sure it's a good change, and the uncertain changes will be left unstaged and we'll figure out what to do with them. This is just a reformatting to do. If it is not nil, you are dismissing. Here you are ensuring it is nil before presenting. You are using guardlet and you are not allocating the main controller here, because somewhere here if you were to create a main controller, oh you can't edit, but suppose here you were to create a main controller, then this code is different from this. Here it would modify the object. Here it would be a local variable. Actually it would give an error saying you can't assign, but unless you are modifying the value, you can use guardlet. Okay, this looks safe. So what are you doing here? If the mode is long exposure and it's not a tripod blend, you are returning false. Here you are verifying that it is not a long exposure mode or it is a tripod blend. Then only you will ask the user to show a tripod. Here you have negated this condition, you have negated this, you have negated this. You have negated this, you have negated this, you have negated this. Yeah, if the value is available and it is low, then you say too short. Same thing, if the value is available and it's low, you proceed, otherwise you return. Sometimes what happens is when I see a bunch of unrelated files being edited this way, if I'm not sure about one of them, I leave it and I commit all the others first, and then I look at this in the next commit. This is a situation in which you should use parentheses, otherwise readers will be confused. Maybe the compiler also, but as a beautiful saying goes, program should be written for readers to read and only incidentally for computers to execute. If you are adjusting focus, return. That is what this code says. What this code says is, to run this code, you should not be adjusting focus. Same thing, just phrased differently. Yeah, this dead code elimination, I don't want to keep it in the same commit. Actually, I think it should be safe because it's file private, so it can be used only here, so it's fine. Still, let's put it in the next commit because 30 files are there. anything you can do in this case helps. This also should be in the next commit. This also should be in the next commit. Here if file size is 0, you are giving an error. Here before you return true, you are verifying that there is a file size, it's not 0. You are not caring about the simulator anymore, and you are verifying that before you create a new mode, the type is different from what you want to create. You don't need comma here because this is a bool and that is a bool. Only when you have if-let or guard-let, you can't use and, you have to use a comma, because this is something we are familiar with, no reason not to use it. You can't combine 2 into 1 if some other code intervenes. So this is like a procedural style of coding. If this happened, return. This is more like a declarative style. You are saying in order to purchase, you should ensure that the user has not paid. Here, if the camera is not nil, you are returning. Here, you are ensuring the camera is nil. This is a comment. If it is the first launch, you are doing these 3 things. If it is the first launch, you are doing these 3 things, otherwise you are doing all these complicated things. This comment is better here. I prefer to put a colon here to clarify that it applies to the line after it, not the line below it. Like I discussed, comments should not restate what the code does. They should say why. If the result count is greater than 0, return result, otherwise self. This should not be staged because it's not a guard. This is not nil. Oh, the dictionary is nil. It's not returning nil. Is it too long? No. Here I would put a space to clarify that the comment is more for this than for this. Like ideally you would put it above. Yeah, let's do that. We have deleted this unused code and we have called the callback. It should be nil to create an album. The value should be high, or the device implementation, the device orientation should be unknown, otherwise you return. And the new value should be different from the old value to trigger the callbacks. Okay, this is good. Especially when you are getting impatient, you should be careful about evaluating the diffs later on. Because there were so many changes to make, I got impatient, which is why right now I am being extra careful. If it is nil, you are returning self. You're never returning nil, you are returning self. Talk about needing to be careful. Otherwise, you are returning presented view controller dot visible view controller. Great. These should not be staged. If the blender is nil, you create a blender. To proceed, there should be some results. There should be a blender. Oops. Now you can remove this optional operator. So what this means in Swift, if you are not familiar, is this. If you do blender.complete exposure, the compiler compiles this into this. If blender not equal to nil, blender.complete exposure. This is what the compiler compiles it into. Or to make it type safe, if let blender equal to blender. Whatever, right? Doesn't matter. The compiler doesn't need to follow type safety. We need to. So this is what this operator means. But you should not use this operator unless it can actually be nil at runtime. Like in this case, it can't be. Because now you are getting into a state where if it were actually nil, this line is not being executed and the next line is being executed. Unless you have thought through the logic, you are introducing a bug. So if I were to follow this pattern, I would put in an exclamation mark operator so that it crashes and we fix. Mode. Okay, empty. If it is video, this is the code. Now you are saying it has to be BGRA, then you run this code. Otherwise, if it is video, you do this. Again, that's not type safe because string, the capture type is a string, it can have some data type. Ideally it should be a bool. Then this refactoring is 100% safe. Like, it is safe because I know it doesn't have any other value, but it's still not the best code. Anyway, we removed the nesting here by using an early return. If you are recording, you do this. Now what you are saying, in order to do all this complex code, you have to be recording, otherwise you do this non-recording code. Great. If there's a super view, you fade out, otherwise you do something else. Okay. What are we doing in the mode selector? It should be visible in order to do all this. So basically the mode selector is a thing that shows you the modes, like in a camera app where you have photo, video, time-lapse, etc. That is a mode selector. And if it is, it should be activated and respond to user input like dragging only if it is not hidden. If it is not, so here if it is long recording mode, you are doing all this. Same thing, if it is long recording mode, you are doing these. You are inlining this function and this one. If it is nil, you are executing this code, and you are saying the same thing here. It has to be nil to execute the code. Great. Phew, we spent a long time looking through diffs. Use guard when possible instead of if to benefit from the compiler's help. Oh, 1 hour 20 minutes, more than enough for this video. So let's wrap it up here, and I'll see you in the next video.